can you tell if you are eating your feelings? That is essentially emotionally eating. Well, I'm going to talk through some of the 5 biggest signs that I see of what emotional eating is. So hi, I'm Vanessa McLennan, a hypnotherapist, psychotherapist, and I help people with their binge eating and overeating by working on the inner them to help them have a life free from food stress. So if you would like to know what are perhaps the 5 biggest signs that you might be emotionally eating, keep watching. I don't think it's that easy to spot, that we are emotionally eating, or I think even to identify that we are emotionally eating. Our eating habits are often so ingrained, they're so habitual that we just do it and we don't know why. Food is everywhere, we just eat it, it's easy to get hold of and we just eat it. But if we are emotionally eating, so that is, we are eating to, hide our emotions, we are eating to help our emotions, suppress our emotions, then that is emotional eating. And when we want to change our eating habits, we often need to look at the emotions or what's going on behind it so that we can then reverse our eating habits. So let's go through what some of the signs are. Boredom or loneliness. So this is, I think, quite a big one for a lot of people. Do you notice that you particularly eat, and I'm talking about a bit more perhaps sugary, snacky foods, like biscuits, crisps, chocolates, or, other foods, but when you are bored, so you might be on your own or you've got nothing to do, it's boring just looking at the same TV programs again. So eating becomes a really good way to, distract us from that boredom. It becomes a great way to, fill in the gap of not being by ourselves. We've got a friend in food who's there with us, and hey, it tastes great. And also, no one's there to tell us how much we can and we can't eat. So if that's the case, that you're noticing, yeah, I'm eating just at these times when I'm either on my own or I'm bored, then where we can stop that pattern is by finding things that you love to do. So finding, what will excite you, or even just like doing a different pattern, like instead of watching TV, finding books to read, or going out for walks, or doing activities. And if it's the loneliness, it's like, how can you get comfortable with your own company? So again, how can you perhaps fill your time with things that you love doing? And it might be that you think of things then that you love to do, so that fills your time rather than food. Comfort eating. Have you noticed that you perhaps feel, low of energy, just a bit, a bit rubbish about yourselves? And food does the trick. Food just gives you that comfort that you need. And I think when we're feeling like that, it's especially the carby, white carby foods that we turn to, the breads, and the pastas that are very filling, but also quite, comforting. So, what about if you're thinking, yeah, but I don't feel low, but I eat all those foods anyway. But that's sort of like an association where we've may not have recognised that we're feeling low, or we may not be feeling low, but we just want comfort, or we just want to feel good, warm, not high good, just a warm, contented feeling. And we have learnt that if we eat these, the breads, the pastas, those white stodgy foods, that gives us what we need. So a way to break this, and it doesn't mean that you totally give up carby foods, but it's just recognizing that, I'm eating foods to help me feel that emotion of trying to be content, of feeling good, of feeling better about myself. So it's to break that, it's to recognize just how you're feeling and in what other ways that you can learn to just feel content. So a lot of the time it's going back and remembering a time that you did feel content, that you felt good. And it's just sitting in that contentedness and, feel good feeling for a moment, and letting that wash over your body, letting yourself feel that, because then you're training your brain to go, this is norm, feels good, it's okay to feel this good. And the more that we can train ourselves to feel like that in the moment, then the less likely we are again to go outside of ourselves and use food to feel that emotion for us. Is the food just always there? So do you have, food in your cupboards, and if it's there, you just have to eat it? put food on your plate and you just have to eat it. Well, this is an emotional eating because there's an emotion behind that, programming that you have to eat it. And it could be sort of programming, from when you're younger, people have told you that you've got to eat everything off your plate. And it could also be that when you do eat everything off your plate, or when you do eat the food that's in the cupboard, it's no longer that temptation there for you. So work out what it is, that's behind the emotion of you having to go and eat it. And then sort of a really tricky one, which is quite hard for some people, is to just throw that food away. It might sound really easy, but actually if that was easy, we'd all be doing it, So it's like giving it a go to throw the food away. How does it feel? And if that's just oh, I can't do that, well then just throw some of it away and just notice how that feels. But you've got to do something, to break that habit of the food always just being a temptation for you. Anger. When you are really annoyed or angry about something, do you notice that that's when you turn to food? So along the way somewhere you have learned that food will help calm you down. It stops you from feeling so angry. And it, of course, then that food feels good. What it does, our mind then goes to the food, it goes to the feelings, and it fills up our stomach. And what we have done is made that pairing, made that association between, anger and calming ourselves down. And also, we might not like feeling anger. It might be an overwhelming feeling. So, of course, we naturally end up, because we've made that association, going to eat food. So sugary, especially carby, food is a good one here because it's quite filling in our stomach. So it does help us to just calm, like chocolate cake, for instance. So one of the ways that you can help break this is when you start noticing, and it's just always mindfulness. It's always been really, really, attentive to what our emotions are telling us. So when we start to feel the anger, rather than automatically reaching out for the food, you just shout stop in your mind and you just pause for 5 long breaths. Okay, take 5 long breaths, notice how you feel. Okay, and then you can make a conscious decision if you want to go for the cake or want to go for the food, but it's just helping you become mindful about it. And you may notice that the pattern starts to break because you're helping to manage that anger a lot better. Do you hate throwing food away? So this is about you, not being able to throw food away, not being able to get rid of food, that's sitting in your cupboards, you find yourself eating it instead of being able to throw it in the bin. Do you find that you have to eat everything off your plate because you can't bear to throw it in the bin? So it's like, what's that about then for you? And this is emotional eating because we are holding on to something that is unnecessary for us, it's not healthy for us, and it's not going to benefit anyone else by, us holding on to it. And so there's an emotional reason for wanting to, hold on and not being able to just let go. So one to try here is to just start practicing with small quantities of food. I'm not talking about, you've just bought them from the supermarket and then you've got to chuck it away. I'm talking about, out of date food that you don't want to eat. It's like at the end of every dinner, it's learning to leave that mouthful behind on your plate and chucking that in your bin. So start there. Every dinner, everything that you eat, leave one mouthful behind and start to chuck that away in the bin. And just notice, how does that feel to be able to start to just, it's releasing and letting go. How does that feel?